is Wednesday, May 18th. This is the third episode of GeekwireTV. Thanks for watching. Not a lot of news today, so we're going to talk about some interesting things. I mean, unless you want to talk about Bin Laden's porn stash and Schwarzenegger having children with someone not his wife, but really, who cares about that? It's not really geeky news, right? So moving on. First thing, I was in my advertising and digital media class yesterday, and my prof mentioned the Obama campaign back in 2010 had done some advertising in video games. 2010, 2008, 2008, my bad. And that was kind of interesting. It kind of drove home how mainstream video games are becoming. I mean, I actually mentioned to him, we were talking about different forms of advertising in the class, and different ways to advertise. We talked about Twitter and Facebook and so forth. And I mentioned that some companies do advertise in video games. I didn't realize the Obama campaign had actually advertised, though. There's an article having to post. I'll put the link in the show notes. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that that was something that had been done. And it's sort of a further sign that video games are becoming much more mainstream, which is kind of cool. But it brings an interesting topic around geeky things, video games, movies, things like that. They're becoming much more mainstream. I mentioned that in my last show, talking about how you can buy D&D books at Chapters, at major bookstores. That's a big change. You know, when I was growing up, you had to go to a gaming store to buy games. You had to, finding miniatures, things like that. It was not easy. You can buy D&D minis at a corner store nowadays. It's pretty impressive now. The obvious reason is there's money to be made, and economics trumps everything, right? So, Chapters wants to make money, so they're going to sell video game guides and D&D books and trade paperbacks. But it's definitely an oddity. It's definitely unusual. What's cool is that I've noticed so far is that geeky things are still retaining their geekiness, for lack of a better term. I mentioned Thor. It was a good movie, and it didn't feel dumbed down or too mainstreamized, for lack of a better term. It was Thor. It was true to the comic. It was true to the mythology, and it was enjoyable. The Star Trek movie they had, what was it, 2 years ago, was a good movie. My personal bias, it wasn't really all that Star Trek in the sense that growing up watching it, I kind of expected a bit of a moral from my Star Trek, but it wasn't bad. It was well done. It was science fiction. You just could have replaced the Enterprise with any other spaceship, and it would have been the same movie. But other than that, it was still really well done. It was still respectful to the property that it came from. And it seems like Hollywood and other people are good at bridging that gap between making it mainstream and making it interesting and appealing to the geeks who are going to be the ones talking about it a lot and who are going to be the ones to go see it mostly. But I mean, Star Trek did really well. It wasn't just Star Trek fans who wanted to go see it. Clearly, there's a mainstream audience there. So I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see how that's going to change over time and what's going to become of that. Video games obviously are no longer a strictly geeky pursuit. Everyone plays video games pretty much. Further to the subject of geekiness and geeky topics and geeky subjects and geeky interests becoming more mainstream, I noticed something interesting in the last couple of years. More female geeks. And that's not going to be that, oh my god, girls play video games. Ah! I mean, I'm past that, and I think most of us should be. But it's interesting to me. In my generation, I'm 32, and there aren't a lot of geeks, female geeks in my area. There are some, but they're in a minority. In the last year and a half, I have met a lot of female geeks who are in their early 20s. It's astounding. It really, like, the ratio is astounding. Now, part of that is I'm in school, so I'm going to school with a lot of people, but even people I've met just around, friends of friends, and people I've associated with, meeting at various parties and whatnot. And it's really kind of interesting. It's really shows that geekiness is more mainstream. It's also more prevalent across all people, genders, race, creed, sexual orientation, in that generation anyway. But I notice it with the women, especially because, again, where I come from, in terms of age, it's uncommon. I've met a few, I've dated a few, they're really cool, but they are the rarity. They are the uncommon geek. You don't see a lot of them. And it's kind of cool to see that changing. So it's just a neat little aside to that I always found. And last on the docket today, since it is a shorter show and I don't have a lot to talk about, I thought I'd talk about a few things that I like. So start with some books. This is The Awarded Man by Peter V. Brett, and my light is kind of shining on the cover. I'll post links to these on Amazon for everything. The Warden Man is a really great fantasy novel. I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and it's hard to get away from the orphan boy, you know, finds a magic sword, saves the world, blah, blah, blah. You get kind of bored of that after a while. And not only do you get bored of it, a lot of it isn't all that well written. The Warden Man, it's really well written. It's really entertaining. It's got a unique take on a lot of things. I like the characters. It drew me in, and it was kind of a slow start, but it was still very entertaining. So I just highly recommend it. I have a hardcover copy, but it's out in softcover, as well. The second book in the series, the Desert Spears, also in softcover, and they're well worth the read. They're really good fantasy, much like my next choice, which is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. If you haven't read the first book in the series, The Name of the Wind, you should, because it's before this. Unfortunately, both my copies are on loan to various people. Yes, I have a copy that I own, and I have a lending copy. That's how much I like this series and this writer. Again, really well-written fantasy. The writing, the way I would put it is it's written within an inch of its life. Mr. Rothfuss, the author, clearly has spent a lot of time editing and removing extraneous material and just doing a lot of work and a lot of really good work. I can say without reservation it's the best book series I've ever read. Peter V. Brett, The Warden Man, is a close second, but you must, if you haven't read The Name of the Wind, you must go right now. You must stop this video, go right now to your local bookstore and buy it and read it. And if they're closed, break in. It's that damn good. Not to oversell, but it's that damn good. I also recommend checking out Patrick Rothfuss's website and his blog, because he's a funny guy and his blogs are really entertaining. So I really recommend checking that out. It's a really great book, and again, I'll post the links in the end. Moving on to some gaming products. I have here Eclipse Phase. It is published by Catalyst Games. Again, my light kind of reflecting off it. Here's the thing. I haven't actually played this game. It's a gorgeous book. It's really cool. I guess I can show you the book a little bit, because, you know, I have a webcam, so that's pretty cool. And here's what really kind of drew me in. Aside from that, it's really cool and the concept is really interesting. I read, and why I recommend it, I read the story at the beginning of the game to introduce you to the world. It is stunning. For a game, I mean, I don't expect much from my gaming fiction. I think most of us don't. It is a stunning story. It is well written. It's mature, which is kind of nice. We don't get a lot of, you know, mature gaming fiction, so that was really cool. And it's just brilliantly written. So I would recommend it for that. As far as gameplay goes, I've had a look at the system. I've kind of glanced at it. It looks fun. I would play it. If I played role-playing games on a regular basis, I would play it. Eclipse Phase is one of the many role-playing games I have on my shelf up there that I will probably never actually get to play, but it looks pretty on my bookshelf, so it's there. And last but not least, I mentioned War Machine in both my previous shows, and there may be people who are watching this who don't know what War Machine is. So here is the main rulebook for War Machine Prime. Yeah, move my hand out of the way there. And I'll show off some of its pages as well. Actually, there's a piece of artwork that is really cool. Here's one of the Warjacks, the Juggernaut. This is great artwork. It's not new, but it's still terrific. And I mentioned War Machine a little bit. It is a tabletop war game. You can play at a smaller scale. It's still a lot of fun. You can play at a large scale. It's also a lot of fun. It's relatively inexpensive to get into, and it's just a lot of fun. The book I just showed you, War Machine Prime, is the rule book for War Machine. What's cool is that there's also a companion game called Hordes, which is more fantasy-esque. War Machine is more steampunk, fantasy, science fiction sort of steampunk combination. They have like lightning guns and things like that. Hordes is more fantasy-esque. They use war beasts instead of warjacks, which are the machines. The Juggernaut that I showed you is a warjack. They're compatible completely. You can play one against the other. You can play them together. But the systems are slightly different for how some things work, but they're still both very playable. They're playable together, and it gives you a lot of choices in factions. There are, if my memory is correct, 10 choices of factions, including the mercenaries. So a lot to play, a lot to try out. And that's it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Remember, be awesome, be geeky. The two are not mutually exclusive. Have a great day. I may not be back on Friday or Monday. It's a long weekend here in Ontario, and I don't know what I'm doing exactly, but I'll try to do a show on Friday if I can, and Monday if I can, but don't be surprised if they don't show up. Thanks for watching again. Have a great day.